Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Building Partnerships, Growing Successful Victim-Researcher-Practitioner Collaborations. My name is Susan Howley, and I am the Program Manager for the Center for Victim Research. The Center for Victim Research is designed to be a one-stop resource for victim service providers and researchers who are looking to connect and share knowledge. Our goals are to improve access to victim-related research and data, and to improve the usefulness of research and data for victim service providers. The Center is itself a partnership between researchers and practitioners at the Justice Research and Statistics Association, the National Center for Victims of Crime, and the Urban Institute. The Center for Victim Research and this webinar are supported by funding from the Office for Victims of Crime at the Office of Justice Programs, U.S. Department of Justice. And with that, it is my pleasure to enthusiastically welcome today's presenter, Dr. Christine Murray, and let her introduce herself and her co-presenter, Catherine Johnson. Christine?
Hi, everyone. My name is Christine Murray, and I'm thrilled to be working with the Center for Victim Research as a consultant. I've been a professor at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro since 2005, and the vast majority of my research has been done in collaboration with practitioners or with a goal of reaching practitioners, and could be considered community-engaged scholarship that addresses different types of victimization, especially intimate partner violence and other forms of family violence. My background is in the counseling field, and so I do have experience working as a practitioner as well with victims and survivors of abuse. I'm very passionate about making a difference in practice and doing research that's relevant to practice. And so one of the areas that I've done research in is in how to bridge gaps between research and practice related to victimization. So what I will be sharing with you today is based on my own research, the research of others, as well as my own experiences as a researcher and a practitioner. I'm also very excited to introduce to you Catherine Johnson, who will be participating as well and sharing insights throughout this presentation. Catherine Johnson is the director of the Guilford County Family Justice Center, which is in Greensboro, North Carolina. The Guilford County Family Justice Center is a one-stop shop for victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, child abuse, and sexual abuse within Guilford County. The Family Justice Center offers multiple services and resources under one roof, including law enforcement, victim advocacy, social services, and legal services, as well as even a virtual courtroom where victims of domestic violence can seek protective orders. So that you can focus more on the content and what I'm speaking about today, I'm going to turn off my video for now. The main points that we'll be covering in today's webinar are as follows. First, we will define what a researcher-practitioner collaboration is. Second, we'll look at some of the many benefits of collaboration. Third, we'll discuss some of the challenges that can arise in collaboration. And finally, we will look at best practices to present a roadmap for successful collaboration. Before we move on to these topics, let's get a sense of who's here today using those little icons that Susan was mentioning to you. So if you are a researcher or a graduate student who's doing research, could you go ahead and raise your hand using the hand icon? Okay, great. So it looks like we have a lot of researchers with us here today. If you are a service provider who works with victims of crime, could you raise your hand? All right, it looks like we have a number of practitioners as well. If you don't identify as either a researcher or a practitioner, if you could leave a comment in the chat box to let us know what your role is, that would be great. So what comes to mind when I say the word collaboration? Most likely, this word brings to your mind thoughts of two or more partners working together toward a shared goal. If you have any personal experiences working in collaborations, chances are that this word also brings up some emotions for you, which might be positive or might be negative, depending on the past experiences and how those went for you. For researchers and practitioners who are working to address crime victimization, collaborations are becoming increasingly common. Perhaps more than ever, funding agencies are requiring collaboration, both between researchers and practitioners and also among practitioners from different fields. Also, collaborations make a lot of sense during times of shrinking financial resources. Collaborations allow professionals and organizations to leverage each partner's unique expertise to advance both research and practice. This webinar is designed to offer you some tools and strategies to foster successful, meaningful collaborations that have the potential to advance both research and make meaningful contributions to practice. And if you're thinking about partnering up with a collaborator, this webinar can also help you to know what to look for in finding and developing a successful partnership. Let's get started by looking at what we mean by a collaboration. So we'll be looking at what is a researcher-practitioner collaboration. Campbell and colleagues defined a researcher-practitioner collaboration as a partnership in which academics or researchers and service providers join together as equals to develop and implement projects in a long-term relationship. So let's break down this definition a bit to highlight some of the key benefits for true collaborations. First of all, collaborations bring together professionals and organizations from different backgrounds, with each partner bringing their own unique expertise into their role in the collaboration. This means that partners complement each other with the unique skills and knowledge that they bring to the table. This also means that the partners should be able to accomplish more together than any one of them could do on their own. Second, in a true collaboration, all partners are viewed as equals and share power. So collaborations don't involve one partner making all of the decisions or having their own needs met without considering the other partner's needs. Within a collaboration, the partners value one another and share decision-making authority. Third, true collaborations involve long-term partnerships. In the context of researcher-practitioner collaborations, this means that collaborations aren't a one-time occurrence. Instead, researchers and practitioners involved in collaborations take time to build strong, lasting relationships so that partners can support one another over an extended period of time. To indicate how many of you have been involved in a partnership like this, in a researcher-practitioner collaboration, if you could, again, using the icons, click the yes mark to indicate if you have been, and click the X, the red X, to show if you have never been involved in such a collaboration. Okay, great. It looks like we have a number of people who have experience with these collaborations, which is great. And later in the program, we'll ask you to share some of your own tips for successful collaborations as well through the chat box feature. There are a number of benefits that can come from collaboration. And as I mentioned earlier, these collaborations are becoming increasingly common. And in part, this is because funding agencies are more likely to require researcher-practitioner collaborations today than they were in the past. But that's only part of the story. Both researchers and practitioners also are recognizing the value that can come from these collaborations, which include these. First of all, you can see a lot more practice-relevant research questions and study designs that come from this type of research as compared to research that's done in isolation. Second, researcher-practitioner collaborations bring together the diverse talents of interdisciplinary partnership teams. Third, these collaborations can lead to improved data collection processes. Fourth, they can allow for greater attention to participant safety and victim research. Fifth, there could be a stronger sense of the credibility of the findings when there's been input from practitioners from the beginning. And also, this type of research or these type of partnerships can lead to more clear advances for both research and practice because of the integration that they offer. So let's take a look at a couple examples of collaborations from my own experience and my own work to see how some of these benefits come to life. The first example that I'm going to share with you is with the National Online Resource Center for Domestic Violence, commonly known as VONET, the VONET website. I worked with a team of researchers and collaborators at UNCG in partnership with staff from VONET, which actually the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence is a part of the Center for Victim Research's Research-to-Practice network. And together we studied the information needs and technology readiness of domestic violence service providers in order to inform the redesign of their website. They were really interested in making their website more responsive to the needs of practitioners and service providers. So this partnership evolved over several years as our team worked together to determine the most usable and user-friendly approach for the redesign of this site. And so through the researcher-practitioner collaboration and through our work together, some of the specific areas of the website that were redesigned to make it more responsive to the needs of service providers included creating a login so people could save content, the categories around which resources are organized, and the overall look of the site. These elements were changed based on the research findings, such as a survey and usability testing, and practice, and based on the expertise of the National Resource Center's team. So this is sort of more of a national example. The next example that I'll offer is related to a partnership with the Guilford County Family Justice Center. And so for this one, I'm actually going to ask Catherine to talk briefly about some of the ways that researcher-practitioner partnerships have been part of the Guilford County Family Justice Center.
Our center, thank you, Christine, and I'm certainly glad to be here and appreciate this opportunity. The Guilford County Family Justice Center partnership is comprised of just about 17 organizations, and on site here we have 60 professionals who work in an integrated model to deliver services for child abuse, elder abuse, and adult domestic and sexual violence. Early in our planning as a partnership here in Guilford County, our initial relationship with the Research-Practitioner connection and Dr. Murray was through having the University of North Carolina, Greensboro, and Dr. Murray facilitate a stakeholder survey to determine the readiness of our partnership and community to engage in a one-stop shop collaborative. Since that time, and certainly our relationship has grown, Christine serves as the chair of our data collection committee and has been essential in helping with data management, helping to ensure that we have the appropriate systems in place to track client information, and really determine ways to use that information to benefit both clients coming in the center for help, but also professionals here providing those services. This includes a full spectrum of things of professional feedback surveys to see how our partners are feeling on site, to client feedback, and really a full gamut of opportunity to be in connection with the university and expertise. And certainly as a practitioner, it's just been wonderful to have that relationship and the significance of that expertise in our planning and also launch of our Family Justice Center.
All right, thank you, Catherine, for sharing that. And just to add a little bit more from the researcher side to that, I will share that it has been an example of a really long-term partnership. I think the earliest research that went into the Family Justice Center planning process probably started around 2008 or 2009, and this was before the center even opened in 2015. So it has really been a long-term collaboration, and although Catherine and I are kind of the sort of core researcher-practitioner partners within that partnership or collaboration, there's a lot of other partners that we work with through the center, as well as we've had a lot of good opportunities to connect other researchers and students, both graduate students as well as some work with even undergraduate students through the university. So it's just a really one example, and I appreciate Catherine sharing some of her thoughts on that. So those are two examples of researcher-practitioner collaborations that I can speak to. And one of the things that I wanted to note about them is that they just show the diversity of what a researcher-practitioner collaboration may look like. So it could be something at a very localized level, or it could be something that is at a broader national level or a state or regional level. So we've talked a lot about some of the benefits of researcher-practitioner collaborations, and overall there is a tremendous potential for researcher-practitioner collaborations to make important contributions to our understanding of victimization and the resources and services that help people who've been victimized. If collaborations hold so many potential benefits, then why are some professionals, both including researchers and practitioners, resistant to the idea? Before we take a look at some of the current challenges that can arise in researcher-practitioner collaborations, let's take a few moments to consider the historical context surrounding these collaborations. It turns out that we can learn a lot from the successes and the failures of the past. And so it's useful to understand the past and current challenges that could arise within these collaborations so that you can think carefully about how to manage challenges and set the stage for your own collaboration success. Let's read through this statement that reflects possible practitioner experiences in collaborations with researchers. I've had mixed success working with researchers. Some have been really interested in partnering and valued our input, but others we would not work with again. One person was just interested in getting the data so they could publish findings, and we never heard from them again. Another asked to have our clients complete a huge packet of paperwork, but this wasn't appropriate given that our clients are in crisis when they reach out to us. In any given collaboration, any of the involved parties could cause problems. So sometimes it's just personality issues or an individual person who contributes to problems. But beyond these individual issues, however, there have been some trends in the challenges that can arise between researchers and practitioners. And there can be a legacy of tension between these groups that people doing this work today may need to address. And so that's why it's important to take a moment to understand them. It's important for people from both camps to avoid pointing the finger at each other, as both groups can contribute to the challenges between them. In fact, both researchers and practitioners may resent being forced into collaborations by funding requirements. So external factors also can contribute to the tension between the groups. In addition, based on past negative experiences that arose during collaboration attempts, both researchers and practitioners may come to hold negative views toward the other group. And some of this is shown in existing research. So some of the things I'm about to mention were found in existing research studies on this topic. So for example, practitioners can hold negative views of researchers, such as that they don't pay enough attention to safety issues, that they speak in too complex and theoretical language, and that they're more concerned with doing research to further their scholarly careers than to help real-world client populations. On the other hand, researchers may view practitioners negatively, such as they're not open-minded toward research findings, that they can be slower in communicating with researchers, or that they're resistant to helping with doing research. As much as we know that collaborations between researchers and practitioners can offer benefits to the field, it's important to acknowledge this history of mistrust and tension among some researchers and practitioners. First, we can learn some tips for what not to do based on the mistakes that have been made in the past. But second, as you consider entering into new collaborations today, keep in mind that some of your partners may not have had positive experiences with collaborators in the past, which may mean that you might need to work a little harder to build trust in a positive relational context for your collaboration. Now that we've talked about some of the history of tensions that have arose through researcher-practitioner collaborations in the victim field, let's turn our attention to some other challenges that can come up in the context of these collaborations. Even in the best of circumstances, when the practitioners have positive relationships, there are some barriers that can impact the collaboration process. First are time-related challenges. Both researchers and practitioners are very busy people. Many researchers work in university faculty positions where they have to teach, publish research, and engage in service to their universities and professions. Practitioners face large client caseloads and often are attending to demanding crisis situations. With all of the demands on everybody's time, it's hard to add anything extra to everyone's workloads, and collaborative projects can indeed be very time-intensive. Relationship challenges also can arise, and just like in any type of relationship, a collaborative relationship can give rise to conflict and misunderstandings. Especially given the limited time of all parties, it can be easy for differences among partners to spiral into larger concerns. Another area of challenges could be the different job contexts between researchers and practitioners. Even when researchers and practitioners value one another, they can face challenges related to the unique demands of their job roles. Partners may use different terminology and have different professional training experiences. At a practical level, even work schedules can differ between partners. Researchers working in a university setting may not work during summers and university breaks, whereas practitioners' schedules are more consistent across the year. Methodological challenges also can arise. Sometimes the strategies that are used to design a methodologically strong study present barriers to the real-world applicability of that study design. In research terms, this is the classic tension between a study's internal validity and external validity. In other words, the more the study has internal validity, the less its findings may reflect real-world conditions. And finally, another category of challenges is limited resources. In many cases, there still is limited funding for collaborative research projects. One concern is that researchers often have salary support for conducting research, but practitioners don't, and therefore practitioners may be required to volunteer their time to engage in research, whereas it's often a job requirement for researchers for which they're being paid. Although there are many potential challenges to researcher-practitioner collaboration, trust that building strong partnerships is extremely rewarding and positive for the partners involved, as well as for the victim research field. So stay positive. With every great challenge comes an even greater opportunity. And if you are committed to building lasting, fruitful collaborations for advancing victim research and practice, you can work to intentionally build strong relationships and carry out high-impact work. In the rest of this webinar, we'll cover some of the most important best practices for fostering successful researcher-practitioner partnerships so that you'll have a roadmap for moving forward with your own work in this area. The best collaborations don't just magically happen. Instead, they're built over time, even in shorter-term projects, in a thoughtful, intentional way. In this section, we'll cover some of the secrets to success for building researcher-practitioner collaborations. As you consider building this type of partnership in your own work, consider how implementing these strategies can support your work and help you and your partners get the maximum benefits out of your collaboration. While I'm going through this section, I encourage you to share in the chat box the tips that you've seen to be helpful for fostering successful researcher-practitioner collaborations in your work. The first best practice that we'll cover is one that will be the key to any of the other ones working. The effectiveness of any researcher-practitioner collaboration will be linked to the strength of the relationships behind it. Of course, it's important to get the necessary work done, and you don't necessarily have to become best friends with everyone involved in a collaboration. But collaborations can quickly deteriorate if the people involved don't feel respected or if they question others' intentions or motives for being involved. Trust and respect are built over time. They're not usually immediately granted. However, even little things can go a long way in building trust and respect with new collaboration partners. This includes showing up on time for meetings, responding in a timely manner to communications, and holding trusted information and confidence. Partners often appreciate when you take time to get to know them and make an effort to build a connection. To gain the trust of and show respect toward new collaboration partners,
Demonstrate consistently that you're a trustworthy person who's genuinely concerned about their well-being. And now I'd like to invite Catherine also to share a few thoughts about what are some keys to building trust for researchers from a practitioner's perspective.
Well, and as you already mentioned, Christine, I think one of the most critical things is really it's more about the person than it is the process. So we talk about this a lot in collaborative work, is that some people just don't really like collaboration, and that is okay. It is not for everyone, and so having the right person who reaches out to make that invitation to do some research practitioner work together, I think certainly is important. I know that my experience here as the Family Justice Center director is I frequently get random solicitations to do research on the clients coming here, but those solicitations have not been rooted in relationship or even a phone call. And so I think having someone who can reach out, establish a relationship, and then really find where the joint interest is. And I think that's been one of the most successful things about the Guilford County Family Justice Center and our partnership with UNC Greensboro has really been about determining shared interest and shared goals and letting that be the basis of the relationship that's built. And so I think, and I say this often, and you have already said it, but I certainly think it's worth restating, is trust equals truth over time. And I think that when both parties feel like their needs are getting met, and that is rooted in a strong relationship where one can be open about each individual's needs, then that certainly contributes greatly to success.
One of the other things that popped into my mind while Catherine was talking was really the importance of nurturing those relationships and then also being protective over them. And so I know that Catherine is always very respectful of my time as a researcher, and so that helps me build trust as well for her. And then likewise, I want to respect her time too. And I will also add too that I think another part of this is that more senior researchers, this is an area where you can really help more junior researchers or people you may be mentoring to help bring them into relationships. Because I think once there's a strong sense of trust that's established between partners, that's an opportunity to expand those partnerships as well and really help support other people who are maybe not quite as far along in their career as well. But I know that I'm also very protective of relationships like the Family Justice Center. And so if I have people even approach me within my university who are interested in trying to collaborate with them, I try to screen them carefully because I want to make sure that they're going to be just as respectful in that partnership too. So I think that the trust and respect is really important and definitely goes both ways. So I think along with that is the second best practice, which is valuing multiple forms of expertise. Excuse me. Researchers who are involved in collaborations with practitioners may need to set aside some of the knowledge that they've gained through their academic training. Training in research and academic training creates a certain type of expertise that's grounded in an extensive body of research. As they write, teach, and present on the subject that they study, researchers do become increasingly viewed as an expert on the subject. And academic expertise is certainly an important type of knowledge. At the same time, there's another type of expertise that practitioners develop through their day-to-day work experiences. This is the kind of expertise that you just can't gain in the classroom or by doing research or reading the latest research done by others. Instead, this is the kind of expertise that is hard-earned by doing the difficult work of supporting victims and survivors of violence and crime and finding safety in dangerous situations, helping them piece their lives back together, and sorting through the many complicating factors that arise in real-life situations. The beauty in researcher-practitioner collaborations is that both types of expertise are valuable and contribute to the work that the partners do together. To make the most of the different types of expertise that researchers and practitioners bring to the table, however, both parties need to understand the limitations of their own knowledge as well as value the contributions of the other's knowledge. Therefore, to foster successful researcher-practitioner collaborations, it's crucial for partners to view one another as having a unique set of knowledge, skills, and areas of expertise, but they share the same ultimate goal, which is to help victims of crime. The third best practice is to take time for cross-learning to understand the job context of your partners. Often, researchers and practitioners don't fully understand the nature of one another's jobs. Unless they've had direct experience working in the other's realm, it's hard for people to really understand the unique pressures that others face on their jobs. For example, practitioners may not have firsthand knowledge of the pressures of being on a tenure-track timeline, whereas researchers may not have experience working in the high-stress environment of a crisis-oriented organization. If you don't have firsthand experience working in a job context like that of your collaborators, commit to learning about the demands that they face in their work, and there are several ways that you can do this. Of course, you could spend time talking with them to learn more about how they spend their time, how their work is evaluated, what stressors they face in their jobs, and the resources they have available or the resources that they lack that impacts their ability to do their jobs. Another effective strategy for understanding the job context of collaborative partners is to take some time to shadow them at their jobs. Spending a day or more watching a partner at work in their job can shed light into the demands that they face. And this can be especially effective for learning the unique dynamics of partners' work environments. Let's do a quick count of how many of you have taken an opportunity to shadow the jobs of people outside your discipline or work role. Raise your hand using the hand icon if this applies to you. And also, this is another topic on which we'd love to hear from you in the chat box with ways that you found it useful to help cross-train with collaboration partners. Okay. The fourth best practice is to invest time into the collaboration process. Fostering strong researcher-practitioner collaborations does take time. Before you enter into these types of collaborations, be intentional about carving out time to commit to the process. If you do have limited time, it might be wise to hold off on this type of work for the time being, because a lack of adequate time could lead to problems for you and the collaborative work later on. If you have limited time but still want to be involved in the partnership, be sure to be upfront about your time limitations and how you'll be able to be involved. Setting clear expectations from the start can help to avoid hurt feelings later on. Doing high-quality, community-engaged research within researcher-practitioner partnerships can take a lot of time and energy, so it's important to thoughtfully consider how much you can commit in light of your current schedule and phase of your career. If you decide to move forward with this work, be intentional about committing the extra time and energy needed to do it effectively. The fifth best practice is to develop a shared understanding of your goals for the partnership. When partners in a researcher-practitioner collaboration have a shared vision for what the collaboration will produce, the partners can unite around that common set of goals to guide the process. Some examples of possible shared goals that might underlie such a collaboration include determining the outcomes of a new or existing intervention, gaining a better understanding of client populations, or identifying ways to strengthen organizational policies to better serve victims of crime. Of course, each partner might also have unique goals for the collaboration process. For example, a researcher may hope to publish the results of the research to support their application for promotion or tenure. An example of a goal that a practitioner may hold is to collect evidence for their organization's programs that can bolster future grant applications. Given the unique job context of both researchers and practitioners, it's natural that each partner will have somewhat unique goals for the collaboration. To the extent possible, collaboration should help each partner achieve their individual goals for the work. However, to maximize the success of the collaboration, the shared goals among the partners should be the guiding force behind the partnership. Therefore, it's important for partners to take time to identify shared goals and commit to working together to achieve them. And there should be mutual decision-making and input into what the goals are to ensure that there are mutual benefits for everyone involved. The sixth best practice is to distribute resources in an equitable manner. When resources are available to support the work of researcher-practitioner collaboration, it's important to distribute those resources equitably. It's important to understand the difference between the terms equal and equitable here. Equal means that everyone would get the same thing, whereas equitable means that resources are distributed in a fair and just manner. When it comes to distributing resources within researcher-practitioner collaboration, this means that decisions about how resources will be allocated are made with consideration to the work context of each partner. In particular, researchers often are already being paid for their time on a research project through their salaries, such as if they're expected to do research as part of their work as a university professor. In addition, direct, tangible rewards for their involvement in research, such as through receiving promotion or tenure. On the other hand, and here is where we'd like to get some input, raise your hand using the hand icon if either you are a practitioner or if you know of a practitioner in the victim services field who has zero expectation that research is part of your regular workload, and therefore research is an added volunteer aspect of your work. So we have a few hands raising here, so we can see that that's a relatively common thing for practitioners not to have research expectations as part of their regular workload. And in fact, many practitioners don't have any expectations to participate in research if their jobs are focused more on providing direct services. Thus, participating in a research project often represents extra unpaid work for practitioners, and having a research publication at the end of the project may not offer them any direct career benefits. Therefore, when financial resources are available to support research done through collaborations with practitioners, it's important to consider ways to provide meaningful financial and other support to practitioners. In practice, this might mean that practitioners might receive an additional stipend for their time. Researchers also may be able to allocate other resources to alleviate the time burden for practitioners, such as by dedicating the time of their graduate research assistants to help their practitioners with data collection activities. And this is something that actually we've done in our partnership with the Guilford County Family Justice Center, is that we've had graduate student assistants from the university who've been assigned to work within the center to provide them with support around their data collection. But what's most important to remember here is that researchers should not assume that practitioners view being a part of research as critical to their jobs. And therefore, wherever possible, researchers should ensure that practitioners receive resources to compensate them for their time on the work, as well as additional support to minimize the time demands that this research work creates for them. The seventh best practice is to involve all partners in all phases of the research process with clearly defined roles. So as we've talked about throughout this program, it takes time to build strong relationships and ensure successful and lasting collaboration. And one of the most effective ways to collaborate and foster these relationships is to involve practitioners at every stage of the research process, from determining research questions, designing the study, collecting the data, and interpreting the findings. Teamwork is key to effective collaborations, and you can't expect strong teamwork if you aren't considering the input of key members along the way. And this is another topic where we'd like to hear Catherine's perspective on as a practitioner. So, Catherine, how do you identify research needs through practice that inform the early stages of planning research?
So for us, and I'll use an example because I think it's a real wonderful example to talk about this involvement process. In Family Justice Center work, we have a lot of different types of partners who are here on site providing services. And so one of the areas that we had some interest in but didn't really have the capacity to tackle by ourselves was really doing some census work or looking at the data needs of all of our partners, how many people they were serving, what did that service look like. Oftentimes you hear professionals say, I'm at capacity, or I have so much going on, and we just didn't even know what that meant. So by our relationship with the university and Christine, we really were able to kind of engage in those graduate research assistantship opportunities with some students who had training and kind of the brain, so to speak, for doing data management. So this wasn't, we use social work interns here all the time, or criminology interns, but this was someone who had some expertise in data that really sat at the table and talked about how can we do some snapshot data collection and really made it outside of just what my individual needs were, but of all of the partners at the table. That was something of benefit, because then we could determine shared definitions, a shared way of doing some data collection and looking at cross-system, multi-level data. And that research-practitioner relationship allowed the researcher to kind of be the hub of the wheel, because we knew we needed some coordinated care around that and accountability. And I think that partners felt like they had an opportunity to share about what they were doing, which was validating to them. And it also allowed us from a research capacity to kind of really look at kind of that systems level view of folks' victims' needs when they were coming into the center, and how that they were interfacing or engaging with other partners. And so I think that from the beginning, with the research perspective, really coming to us and saying, what do you need? How can we help identify the needs of the centers, the gaps in data collection or the gaps in the systems of care? How can we partner around that? And it's really been an evolving conversation, which I think it goes back, and I know we've already said it multiple times, but how important the relationship is, that we have an open line of communication, that when we create a plan, we follow through, we have realistic expectations of one another. I think the other kind of really great thing about partnerships is different partners have different strengths. And so it may not just be what your job title is, but actually what personal resource you bring to the table. And so when you stay engaged throughout the process fully, you really have an opportunity to figure out who is best at what and why they're best at that. And so how we can all leverage some personal resource to get the professional benefit that we want. And we've had just multiple examples of that. That have just really worked really well here. And it's all been driven out of everyone being engaged the whole time, folks clearly understanding what was expected of them, but also if something was requested to be expected that someone knew they couldn't deliver, it was a safe enough relationship that they said, no, I can't do that, but I can do this. And so I think that process of negotiation so that both parties kind of get what they need certainly attributes to success as well.
Yeah, I think that really speaks to the importance of engaging. If you're a researcher, engaging with the practitioners from the very beginning. If you're a researcher and you're planning a study and then you take it after the study design that you want to do has already been laid out, chances are it may not be feasible, it may not be safe, it may raise a lot of concerns for your practitioner partners. So it's really important for that perspective to be valued from the beginning and for everybody to have a really shared sense of who's going to do what in that process. The eighth one really speaks again to the relationship aspect of this, and I think that we really just can't say this enough, how important having a positive relationship that underscores a researcher-practitioner collaboration is. And in fact, kind of going off of what Catherine was saying, I can remember when we were requesting from the particular department the graduate student that was going to be the first data manager graduate student, they said, well, what research skills do you want? And we were really clear. We said, we just want somebody who's good at relationships and who's good at partnerships, and we'll bring them up to speed on the research and the data skill set after that. So it's really important to use really good, positive relationship management skills. This is general relationship skills like being a good listener, being positive and clear, and practicing kindness in your communications. As well as being very committed to sharing information openly. So there shouldn't be confusion among the collaboration about where things stand, who's doing what's going on. People should know what's happening. But then also be prepared if conflict situations do arise, because even in the best of circumstances, everybody's busy. There's a lot going on in these cases. So be prepared to manage conflict as it comes. So if there's conflict, take time to identify what's going on, work together to find a solution, and take steps to repair the relationship. And also be prepared that these relationships really can and do change and evolve over time as the needs in the community change, as people change and shift into new roles. And so just bring a lot of flexibility to the process. The ninth best practice is to address safety and ethical concerns in a collaborative way. And so both researchers and practitioners have a lot of important safety and ethical considerations, but a lot of times they might present sort of conflicting guidelines or different lenses to look at. So for researchers, often this is driven by the IRB, the Institutional Review Board process. For practitioners, this may be driven by their confidentiality requirements, government reporting, accreditation, professional guidelines. So it's important to kind of take that time to really think through how to carry out this research in a way that really prioritizes the safety of the victims of crime. And so again, Catherine, are you able to share some examples of some protections that you've put into place through the Family Justice Center with data collection that are really focused on protecting victims' privacy and safety and really also reducing the re-traumatization?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we have a survivor committee called Voices that kind of gives us feedback, and sometimes they talk about feeling like they're always like a test subject, or that, you know, they're solicited so often that they just feel like they're constantly being asked to provide their feedback on their experiences. And so one of the things we've done from a data perspective is really looked at how often survivors are being surveyed and what do those surveys look like, and can we consolidate things. Clearly, from the time someone walks into the door, consent is really important. One of the things that we put all of our, even if we have a graduate assistant here on site, they go through training, they understand confidentiality, they have to sign confidentiality forms, because we know that if they do have access to client information, we need to make sure that the client is de-identified and protected. And I guess that's just another positive plug for working with a researcher, is that they understand de-identifying data, they understand coding. Our first graduate assistant who was here, and she actually loved it so much, she stayed on after her internship finished, but she just talked this code language that I had no idea what she was saying, but she was able to protect information in a way and really build a system of support that protected client information, and really using her expertise and background in how she understood coding and building systems and databases. It just was a real win-win, because obviously protection of people's private information and people's privacy is really important. And certainly all of our partners have various guidelines that they have to follow around what can be released, what can't be released, and client safety is at the top of the list every time.
That's a great point, and we definitely have had to do a lot of that and be very flexible in terms of understanding different partners, because safety and privacy, when you're talking to law enforcement, is very different than when you're talking to victim service agencies. So it's important to be very collaborative about that, but really make that one of your ultimate priorities of the collaboration. The final best practice is, once you have completed the process and you have the findings, to be intentional about disseminating the findings to both practitioner and researcher audiences. So a lot of times when research is done, the focus is just on getting that peer-reviewed journal, scholarly article out there. And that certainly can be important for researchers, especially working in university settings. But it's also really important to be intentional about disseminating the findings to practitioner audiences as well. And so I know that there will be other resources from the Center for Victim Research to really help with that process, but some of the strategies that can be useful for practitioners include writing a white paper, maybe making that available through a website, a blog, posting findings through email, social media, but also just face-to-face meetings. And especially what I think is really important is at the end of the research process to have that meeting with your team and other members of the organization so that information can really be shared among the people who've been involved. So we've walked through a lot today and sort of a limited amount of time, but I think that the main point that we hope that you carry away from today's webinar is that these collaborations between researchers and practitioners can offer a lot of benefits for researchers, practitioners in the field. And so even though there might be some challenges that can arise through these collaborations, they are worth it both personally, professionally, for your organizations, and again, for the broader professional field. But they take some work, and so any type of relationship requires work, intentional effort, and effort to ensure that there's a really positive path for those relationships. So, Catherine, before we wrap up, do you have final thoughts that you would like to share regarding researcher-practitioner collaboration?
My final thought is it's just worth exploring, and I think that we've talked in the context of researchers reaching out to practitioners, but also practitioners being able to reach back out. And I think finding a person that you can connect with, that you can get behind a shared mission, is a great strategy. I also think that I encourage folks to think about, you may be thinking that only a human services department is the place that you should go, but Christine's done a great job connecting us with GIS and mapping and other departments who have some interest in this area. And they may not be it might not be from a social interest, but there are some other ways to leverage those relationships. So kind of dream big in the land of the various types of research practitioners that you could get engaged with.
Right, and so there can be a lot of diversity in what these different partnerships look like. And at the core of these collaborations is this idea that working together, research and practitioners can leverage their unique and collective strengths to generate research that's meaningful for practice and that's also grounded in solid research methodology. So we hope that you've gained a lot from today's webinar and taken away some practical strategies that can help you in fostering your own researcher-practitioner collaboration. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Susan.
Great. Thank you so much, Christine and Catherine. This has been so enjoyable. And I see that we have a little time for questions. Questions for Christine and Catherine can be entered in the chat box. Please select all participants to make it easy for us to see those questions. And as we move into questions, I'm also going to open up a poll to get your reactions to today's program. Please do take a minute to provide feedback to us so that we can be sure we are providing the best service to our participants. All right, I see the poll. And the first question is, are the slides saved somewhere that I could download them? We are recording today's presentation, and we will also be transcribing it. We will send out the link to the slides and the recorded webinar probably sometime mid next week.
If I may just really briefly, I'm scanning through the chat questions that were raised throughout the program, and I see one about how would I find a researcher, and I think that is something that a lot of times practice agencies and practitioners may wonder. They might want to find a partnership, but really not know where to look. And so just really briefly, I will touch on that point as well. A lot of universities now have community engagement offices, or at the very least, they would have a research office where you could potentially get in touch with the head research officer at the university who might be able to help point you into the direction. But theoretically, there should be an office on the university campus that links to that. But I think beyond just finding people who have a good fit, just like we've spoken about before, I think really finding people who have that personality and that respect for practitioners and that more practitioner-oriented mindset is important. So I think it would be important for you as a service provider to really take some time to get to know them, interview them, talk with them, gauge their interests and their availability as well. But there should be offices on many university campuses that are helpful. And yes, and the center will also have a researcher directory too, as I see.
Right, and just to remind people, while we're waiting for the center's website to go live, if you are interested in contacting a researcher, you can reach out to cvr@urban.org, and they can go through the folks that have already volunteered to be part of our researcher directory and see if they can make a match for you. For those of you looking for a practitioner partner, remember, one of the best ways to do that is to meet someone in person, such as at a conference or an event. So many states have statewide victim service conferences. A number of localities are planning receptions and other awareness events for Victims' Rights Week, which happens in April, and for Sexual Assault Awareness Month. We'll also have many more tips on how to find a researcher or practitioner partner on the CVR website. All right, I'll give people just another minute to enter any questions into the chat box. Thanks to all of you who've taken our closing poll. All right, please do note that there is an offer if you are looking to conduct research with the Children's Advocacy Center. The National Children's Alliance is offering to make a connection for you. Thank you so much, Caitlin. If other questions occur to you after the conclusion of this webinar, please do email us. You can email me, that's Showley, SHOWLEY, @jrsa.org, Showley@jrsa.org. I will share your questions with Christine and Catherine, and we can get back to you. All right, I don't see any additional questions. So with that, I want to again say thank you to our presenters. This has been a wonderful kickoff to our webinar series. Please note that there are a number of ways that you can reach out to us. Thank you so much for spending part of your afternoon with us, and we hope to see you on the next webinar. Information about that will be circulated to everyone who participated in today's webinar. Thanks so much, everyone. Goodbye.